everybody. Welcome to our show. Welcome to Ogrodje, which should be translated to a framework in English. Welcome to our very first episode that we're going to try to do in English today. This is something that we want to experiment with because so far we were all Slovenian podcast. And primarily when we were preparing for this talk show, we waited for a while to get a speaker that would kind of like transcend our local space and who would be fluent in English. And luckily we found such a guest. Wrong one, but
we'll discuss that why you're the wrong one. But
yeah, but equally, like if our English is so bad and we need a fallback, you're also fluent in Slovenian, so we can go.
Thanks for that. I take that.
We can also fall back with that.
You took some Slovenian courses, right?
Yes.
So see, you can
say,
do bilingual.
You can say at least
Pre-2020.
You can say at least hello to everybody.
Yeah, Juvia.
Here we go. And what else should we say?
You forgot to mention that this episode is part of the Borderless.
Oh, yeah. We should definitely tell people that.
Yeah.
So we're going to prefix all the content that's in English with Borderless tag or name, which should hint that we are transcending our borders of our little country, trying to go, again, speak to international guests. That's the intro for today. We're going to talk about security, a lot of things around security, but still we'll try to be more aware about security that's related to developers, I guess, which is your specialty. And you're going to be the host today, right?
I'll try. This episode, like, in a way, is honor, like, to have you here, Pedram. Like, to sort of do the connection, how and why. Like, we met, it was first B-sides. And I think you were like one of the first submissions, like you submitted to call for papers for B-sides, and I was like sort of cheering. Come on, we have somebody from Australia that's willing to speak at B-sides. How come? And the funny thing is, like, it's sort of what we joke about. You mentioned that, like, for that request, you said you want to see Kremšnita.
Yes.
And I was like, there's an Australian guy who wants Kremšnita also there. So yeah, long story short, so you're married to Slovene, living in Australia. You work in security industry, so information security. Maybe quick question. What's sexier, cybersecurity or information security? What do you prefer?
I will go with the former.
So information security. So we're like skipping the cybersecurity. Cool. So
or whatever you did, to be honest. You tried to find the word.
Like you're now sort of a regular guest on yearly base coming here, and sort of we. In a way, I could basically call you a friend. Like this friendship, whenever you're around, well, you, in a way, also like helping the local security community here. So, and for example, like yesterday, you had a great sort of a workshop on Python meetup. So that's why, like, you're working with developers or like this knowledge. So in cybersecurity,
cybersecurity.
You got me there. You got me there.
He did a poll on Twitter and he's still I think it was 50-50 or something.
Yeah, it was 50-50. It
So
depends.
We lost the VAT. So let's just use whatever.
Depends who you ask, and if you ask ChatGTP, you have like it's always referring to cybersecurity. So it seems that the buzzword. But okay, we'll stick to information security. So, like, this short introduction. Who are you? Like it's sort of a like
It's just a philosophical question.
should because in a way in the intro we said like we're going to host a great hacker. So are you feeling like this title should suits you? Like you feel like you?
I mean, hacker has different meanings, right? Someone who changed something
it
to
depends,
make it better, or someone to break into things, right?
or like explore, or like wanting to learn, wanting to figure out how things are working.
I think definitely curiosity is part
Yeah.
of it, right? And hacker, I don't know, just kind of, I feel that curiosity more represent the person who like is into security, because kind of you want to use the functionality for the purposes that the engineer who built that or the team that have built that maybe never thought about it.
Yeah.
Or finding that beautiful edge case that can make this program do something differently. Now, obviously, if it impacts, people's life or, businesses, that become a security issue. But I think that sense of curiosity, I would say, yeah.
One of the biggest critiques of our podcast is that our guests, our listeners sometimes need to Google our guests to find out who they are. So formally, my understanding is that you have PhD in security and you taught at the university in Australia, where you, I'm not sure if you still teach, but you teach us, what did you teach, or like, can you tell us a bit more about it?
I mean, the hardest thing for me is bio, right? Currently I'm a lecturer at a university in Down Under. And, I teach a master course in, I should say cybersecurity related, is a technical course. But apart from that, I also teach to general, developers out there in terms of secure programming. This was just a transition I had. Like, I was more, as you know, more on the other side of the game, looking at, how do we find bugs, how we can find better bugs. Is it dev podcast? I should say bug,
Yeah,
not defect. I shouldn't
absolutely.
say vulnerabilities or
Yeah.
issues. So yeah, and then kind of it was I would say natural transition.
So like let's maybe like start in the beginning, how you sort of study this, or how you like start in information security, how you like what made you like this, because you definitely did a transition from offensive security to now defensive security, and like teaching developers how to do like secure coding or best practicing in terms of applying security best practices in development, but still.
So I mean, the funny thing is, I always say there is no book for security as you have book for PHP and Python and Java. just open it up and you finish it. You're kind of advanced security guy. And I think that's the beauty part of it. I think, again, I want to go back to the sense of security. How it started, well, someone tried to hack me. Back in the days, they tried to, we had this newsletter, and for some reason that newsletter got popular. And this person had the interest, or actually two people, to, get some admin access on that newsletter. And, they were, I would say, talented enough that they built their own backdoor or Trojan file. And they sent it to me, and they were asking me, to execute that.
Via mail.
I did execute it.
So spear phishing.
Yeah, because they were part of like, that community themselves. I'm like, okay, and I'm like, I'm executing this, but it doesn't work. And then the other guy on the other side of it, there was a chat happening, and he tried with this command, this parameter, and like none of them works. And then he keeps asking me, try with this and that. After some point, I just felt there's something fishy going on. And then after a while, the guy actually gave me a call over the phone. Like, hey, are you sure you're running that? I'm like, yeah. and he said, okay, but have you tried this? I said, yeah. And then the guys, I started asking, are you, I'm kind of not sure whether you're telling me truth. The guy is telling me. I'm like, well, why is that? He's like, because, do you know what that file is? And then I kind of got some idea, like, yes, I know. Which I have no idea what it is. Yeah, and then he's kind of like, you're a good hacker. I'm like, what does that even mean? I didn't even say anything. So long story short, the reason that thing didn't work was not because the program was failing, was because I was using a university internet and they had proxy.
Okay.
And the proxy was blocking all the traffic.
Okay.
And like I thought, I know it. I pretend that I'm executing that file, but I was actually not doing it. He was thinking that way. That kind of got me in.
But
was like,
did he like? Why would you run malicious software?
so we're talking really long.
Yeah, okay,
the
okay.
days of when we even didn't call it malware, we was talking about viruses and AVs.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
So very early
kind of
days.
early dial-up internet and
Okay.
the old internet connections, which we had programs called Trojans. I know some people remember Sub 7 or things like that. You could connect remotely, do stuff. But that kind of opens up the idea of that, hey, there is something more to what you see when you run a program or when you connect to a network. And then, there was no resources. Like, there was effectively a couple of like CD-ROM, like CD disks that had some hacking tools on them. And then you had some text files from like there was a magazine called Frack magazine, which still exists today.
Do you want to explain what Frack magazine is to young audience?
Ooh. So back in the early days, that was like it was like monthly,
I think so.
monthly, and then when it got like older, it became annually. But concept was like from like BBSs. So when like people were interested in.
But this was online, or you had to order
no.
via mail or something?
They were like also later on the printed copies, but usually the BBSs had like, and they were like short TXT files. With good description of sort of exploiting or like getting familiar with I don't know, technology or concept, and I'm like from programming or how to I don't know, program some special computers, or how the I don't know the
So
ATM networks work, or how the ISPs communicate. Like they were like in a way resourceful manuals how to get know about some technologies.
But these were like snippets without long explanations, or
it got into real details. So they were like basically back then the really good sources where you like understand how like new technology works.
Yeah, pretty technical. I think one section which I liked the most was phone hacking.
Yeah,
because we had a really high bill for our internet connection, because I was
But
not the internet
was
one, but the
expensive.
phone line.
Yeah.
I was looking for a way that, hey, can we switch to maybe neighbors?
yeah. Those
Phone line, and
freaking was like very, very, very popular, and like basically everything grew out of that kind of community.
Yeah.
But there's a big gap between 2023 and the dial-up. What did you do in between as well?
I mean, that kind of interest growed in, right? And then I think then we are talking about the days that, web apps start to emerge, like in CGI bin folders, and there's lots of interesting things there. And then PHP become a thing, right? And you could almost touch every website and there is like XSS and SQL injection there. And because they are starting to evolve, we are talking about very early version of MySQL. And again, it was more like understanding how, I think the way I end up finding some, actually I have some CVEs goes back to 2005. You kind of, I actually learned it from a programming way. Like I've actually learned how you can build a web app and then how you can communicate with the database. Then when someone said, hey, you know, we have this variable here, or PHP just gets everything in the request and dump it in a query. Well, okay, so I know that kind of what kind of query will make what. It was not just like just go there, put a typical Wikipedia example of SQL injection 1 equals to 1.
Yeah.
It was more like you could think a little bit more further than that. Okay, this query does that, so 1 equals 1 will not work, but this other one will work. So I kind of, it was almost more like I should say there were like forums, like discussion boards of really enthusiasts that they really want to help, like want to like help you when you are, you know, trying to find an issue, or kind of you are really close to exploitation. You could ask question and, you know, they will just answer it. I think that kind of engraved in me that this is like really also nice that, you know, you also share this knowledge. And I think from beginning was this idea of the ethics was always there. I think it's kind of it was not cool that you find this issue and not telling vendor about it. But at the time, you know, we are not talking about, you know, these days, majority of the, well, good businesses, they have this, they understand there could be a time someone report a security issue to them. And there is an unwritten rule of responsible disclosure policy, right? Which is, but back in those days, maybe it was not that clear. And normally, when you report a security bug, often you want some attribution back. I remember when we were reporting some security bugs to some vendors, you're like, okay, the only thing we want from you is just mention my name in your next newsletter. I go there. I do it.
Okay.
And you started as a I don't know, researcher, or as somebody who was like chasing those bugs, exploring on your own, or how you like?
Well, I mean, it actually started first by like building networks. I remember like the first thing you do, you know, when I bring up a Windows NT and, you know, set up a network, and then you move to Linux, you're like, it's not that easy. Even just bringing up a DHCP server needs that much config file, and there's no sample file out there. Like just Google for it. You know, you need to figure out what each configuration does. I think this started then, like learning really the foundations, learning really how things work from physical layer all the way up to application layer. And kind of that I feel is, and the more you know about how things work, the more you can kind of challenge these assumptions we have between different layers, which I always mention it, like the more you know how things will translate into, well, in a different layer of the network, the more you can find out, okay, like if this thing doesn't have this specific format, well, guess what? It could result into a security bug. I don't think there's any shortcut there. You need to know it.
So this is like basically through this learning experience, exploring like new technology, like you mentioned, Linux and so on. You basically migrate to information security, and like getting all that knowledge gave you the foundations on top. You could, like, I don't know, have a career in information security.
Yeah, exactly. I actually, when I graduated from my doctoral degree, I actually didn't know there is even a job exists that they pay you to find security bugs. Like, I didn't even know there is such a thing even exists, because always it was a hobby. It was always this sysadmin type guy that maybe care about how long the password should be, and then maybe put some restriction there or to harden their SSH endpoint. It wasn't really a thing that you could feel, well, someone really would be interested that you go and ethically review their system and they would pay for it. I remember I was actually looking for more like a research engineering type positions I actually came across all of a sudden with this position that talks about, are you familiar with web application security issues? Do you have any experience finding security? Was like, whoa, this seems like interesting. And yeah, and I ended up working there effectively as a consultant, a penetration tester. And that's, yeah, getting familiar with the whole story of, okay, nowadays you need to do vulnerability scan, and you report that to a customer, you need to explain that, and yada, yada, yada. Started there, yeah.
But like with like in this process, like we could already say that you're a veteran in the field, like and like you said, the basically jobs in information security back then were like not known, or like not like wanted that much. But now, like, you have kids finishing college that specialized in security, and like you have this new generation of people already very eager to work in information security field, and maybe you can like share like how you see this new generation of
I don't not necessarily agree with whether the colleges or even universities produce skilled people, but definitely eagerness. Now, eagerness was there also back then. Like, maybe it was not in a sense of web application hacking or cloud hacking, but it was also, if you remember, we had the whole area of cracking files, cracking games, and all these things, and the whole concept of reverse engineering a game to figure out how it works. Or you can just, I remember we were trying to crack those old Prince of Persia type game, or how can I jump to last level, and that was my exposure to hex editor. And the things are, things behind the scene looks like hex, and I thought actually hex is what machine will understand, and then I realized no, there is something more layer behind it. It was more those things. So even those days there were people who were looking to do this. I think viruses and things was the area that a lot of people wanted to figure things out. Like, that there are things can go wrong with the system, but and I don't necessarily know if there was any college degree, doing it. But okay, coming back to what was the question? The new generation?
Yeah, the new generation. So basically, you from your transition on how you like ended up in this field or gain this kind of expertise, we can like definitely see the new generation. Like in a way, it's sexy to work in information security or work as a penetration tester or a security researcher. But from my perspective, what I see is like this young generation, or people not having enough knowledge, fundamental knowledge of understanding, I don't know, how TCP/IP networking works, or understanding how operation system works, and they just want to like do the sexy stuff in terms of hacking and breaking stuff, but not really understanding what are they like breaking and what is like in the layers below running, and why things are working that way.
And the things that takes time, the things that you need to spend more time.
But I'm gonna
right?
challenge you guys now. So this could turn into like old people nagging nagging about younger generation, right? But what if the layers that you guys mentioned so far have been around so long that they are so mature and so protected, and so all the bugs have been found, and they're so stable that those layers are not with flaws. So today they're coming from very different angle. They're approaching from top down, right? So perhaps then in that case you need a different kind of skills.
Which is a good news to hear, right? So otherwise we haven't wasted our time just
I mean, you can challenge all that.
Still fixing the IP protocol there, right? Well, having said that, there was just a vulnerability identified in ping implementation of one of the Linux distro just recently.
And
Ping ICMP protocol right now, 2023, right?
So it's not that all these layers are so very secure.
I mean, you shouldn't ask me for that. But definitely there has been a huge improvement, right, in all those layers, right?
Yeah.
And kind of you assume that, one of the best things, for example, like these days, you always assume the traffic that comes from your browser to your API is secure, is on a secure channel. You never think twice, but you go back some years ago, that was not the case. Actually, some of the findings that you may find in the pen test report was always about SSL. Oh, you're not using this certificate, but kind of, sort of, maybe, I don't want to give a percentage, but that is kind of gone, which you're happy. So kind of, we don't really need to report on those sort of things. We have definitely improvement on some front-end frameworks, right? Like, some of the security issues are really hard to get introduced, which again, we're glad to see that. So it's kind of by default, some of these frameworks enforce some security controls that if you really want to do something very bad, there's like a function they don't limit you, but the function is called, I don't know, dangerously something. Something kind of gives you a hint.
You're doing something very fishy,
Which is great, but back in the days, well, in JavaScript, you have eval.
Yeah.
Is eval dangerous or not?
Yeah.
I think the eval should be renamed to something. Don't call this function ever parameter. So definitely was an improvement. But again, coming back to that, I feel those foundations are necessary. Like if you don't know how, say, computer works, what processes, how, and then you want to quickly jump in, like, let's say, about learning about Docker security, container security. But behind the scene is a process. Behind the scene is a C group. Behind the scene is a namespace, right? It's nothing different. But without that foundation of, like, let's say, I'm not saying you need to know the Linux kernel, but without that foundation that what are these are, just jumping in, running in a scanner, trying to find a security bug in a container, not going to take you far. If you want to be a thinker in this area, perhaps one of the really good quotes I can mention here from one professor in Australia, he said that in our industry, we have so many technicians in security, but we just need more engineers, like people who can come and think. And I feel to be that engineer, you really need to understand how things work.
What is, like, in your view, like a big difference between, I don't know, I will use the term hacker here, but what's the big difference between a hacker and senior software engineer? Is there even a big difference?
Yeah.
And in what way? Can you, like, elaborate on this a bit?
So I found, like, engineers in general more have this builder mindset, the mindset of getting things working, getting things efficient, solve that defined problem. But like someone who is on, let's say, in a hacker or security side, is more like a breaker mindset. I often make this example, like to build a bridge, it takes some skill set, but to blow up that bridge in a controlled manner so it doesn't touch the buildings around, that is different set of a skill set, whereas the original builder may not necessarily have it. I actually found this through the workshops that I ran, that the person or some of students I had back in the days, that you find this super talented guy, he seems to really good in programming, he doesn't even need any direction. And I really think, that person should be great for, thinking about all these edge cases, rare cases that can happen to a software that can result into a security issue. But he's just not interested. They're like, they don't find it attractive. They don't find it cool. They actually like to build things. Yeah. And that makes sense.
And like, before jumping to the next section, in this process, like in the beginning you said, and that's also my experience, like this InfoSec community worldwide is pretty open. It's pretty, like, this knowledge sharing is always there. Like in a way like the open source community, but even more like the way I see it, even more friendly in a way. And you're also the father of Sec Talks. You're the founder, right?
Founder,
Yeah.
father figure.
Maybe you should like explain us, because basically you build sort of a community in let's call it your backyard, and then like outgrow this community to copy paste it in different around Australia and abroad. What is Sec Talks about?
I think it has started with the whole thing that you like to visit like-minded people in the industry, and you know, security, although maybe is a big topic now, it doesn't have, I don't feel it even have such a large community of people comparing with perhaps software development community to some extent. So it was always good to just, you know, sit around, and just given the nature of security, there are things that people may not necessarily talk about it online, but maybe in a setting, you know, in some venue, they may actually talk about it, and you may hear very interesting stories. So I think, again, that was again a natural thing. You kind of feel, oh, I actually like to visit. At the time I was in Perth, in Western Australia, there was some ad hoc events happening there, and after a while, one of those events that we had that like was running for every month, it suddenly stopped, and then we just felt this void of, oh, actually, you know, I want to really meet someone. And then I was also working for a security consulting business at the time, and then I was like, hey, what if, you know, we just try to run it here, ask around, and that primarily started. But the things I think we started from beginning, I try to advocate it, was this whole idea of the no bullshit. Like, you know, you come here, more than welcome. We would love to talk to you. You can even give a talk, but keep the bullshit.
But this is sort of like I'll say we the security people, we really don't want to hear and see bullshit. Because basically each security community or each like this kind of local community going on, like.
But like, can we be a bit more specific? What do you mean bullshit? You mean you don't want to hear, I don't know, marketing pitches? You like do you want to talk about I don't know, exploits, vulnerabilities, how to protect your systems from it? You want to have, you know, first raw access to this kind of data.
Yeah, but to be hardcore technical.
Yeah.
To not like presenting the upper layer, how this what you built or what you're going to present is great and so on, without discussing what is running above.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I think you look at, when you're long enough in security, you know things are not secure. And that's the reality of it. Like, you can't really say, even claim, and there are interesting stories that CEOs going out and claiming such and such database engine is secure, and then there is a book is now written for that, how to hack that database engine out there. So you kind of you see these things, and also as a geek or a technical guy, you know how things work, and you know, okay, under these conditions and that certain assumptions, maybe that thing is secure, but in reality it's not. And you don't want to go somewhere just hear someone talking about that. It's kind of want to attract those people who have a genuine interest in the field, not necessarily are opportunistic that they think. Well, I would say perhaps the time that this whole thing started was not so much a big topic. It was more like, well, you just get together, have a chat. So kind of trying to attract those guys. And the other thing I felt was important is that this egoistic nature of when you feel you're a hacker or a security guy, you feel you're so special that because you find something that perhaps nobody in that team could ever discover it, and kind of you have this feeling of, okay, all right, so I'm very important. But I actually didn't like it either. I'm like, if you are a great hacker, you actually can you explain to someone who doesn't have any clue?
Yeah.
Well, then that means you're a really good hacker. I can sit here and talk about everything is broken, this Wi-Fi is broken, or that network is broken, but that doesn't.
It's not useful insight. We know that it's already broken. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just come and talk about it. Yeah.
Okay.
And in like.
May I ask this question?
Yeah, sure.
You come up as a really humble in this conversation, but there is a Sec talks around the world. There's around 10,000 members of this community or something like that. Yeah. So in all major cities, these Sec Talk events appear on monthly basis, if I understand correctly. So audience out there, if you're interested, make sure you find it out. We'll put some links there, right? Can I do that? but it's interesting because this is one of those meetups that it's not recorded, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, but there were some recorded meetups during COVID, but then
and in general, it's true
that in person. You want to meet people in 3D. You don't want.
And like to some extent, like those meetups also include capture the flag. Maybe it like for the audience to explain what is this.
Perth is a city in Australia, which 1.4 million, but it may feel that so there's a lot of people there, but at the time, any of you who are a meetup organizer, you know that it's really hard to find good content. So the idea, and we play a game in security, which I always advocate to anyone who wants to start security to do it, is capture the flag, which the goal is, you hack into this simulated or virtual environment to find a flag. And a lot of people naturally has interest in that. But one of the things I often found was missing is that, these CTFs typically run as part of a conference, and you have lead hackers, they go and break things and find the flags and get the trophy. But you don't really hear that how they have done it, like how they have achieved it, which I felt that was a knowledge missing. But guess what? It was like one stone, two birds. It was like, okay, how about we run a CTF, we limit it only to 60 minutes, and then let the people doing it on the day, and then in the next session, because it's very hard to find a good speaker, the person who hacked it can come and talk about it. And we have this filler of the events happening. That worked well especially for the smaller communities we had. So it's like a good starter. And hopefully we don't end up, getting any vendor talks and things to crippling.
But I think like nowadays the capture the flag contest or like online hack in the boxes became more popular than 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure.
It's not. My understanding is that if this used to be like part of the conferences organized to challenge people, now it's becoming very competitive and really big thing across the globe. People are really learning and preparing just for these things. So, as we discussed earlier, we said that you need to learn these layers to build your stack and learn all the things. People are now optimizing for just these games, if I understand correctly, right? So they probably learn all the tricks that are possible in these time frames, or is there like element that you need to reinvent some new mechanics or?
Yeah, the way I saw like the good teams, like they have their own tooling. They prepared like how to had some advantage on how to compete.
Prior to coming to these challenges.
Yeah.
And a lot of some of the good hacking tooling or security testing tooling actually came out of some of these CTFs. Specifically, one quite interesting security issue, which is known as severed site template injection or SSTI. This bug was the demonstration of how bad this bug can get, or how this vulnerability can get so bad, was through some of the CTFs and the write-up one of these players had, and kind of that expanded that, wow, this thing can go really seriously bad. So and then publishing those tools, and as Andraž said, some of them actually have the Python libraries even for how to do different things so quickly. But it's a competition.
Can you give us a bit more example on what's in this toolbox that they use?
I mean, let
Or let me rephrase the question. Can you give us example of these challenges? Like, what would be, for example of a good assignment that would be part of a capture the flag challenge?
well, those are like the default ones of stenography, like hiding the flag inside some kind of image. Then like very known are like also the PCAP, so snapshot of network traffic, and then inside like that there's a flag. What else?
I mean, reverse engineering.
Reverse
so you have a
engineering.
binary file, and
Yeah.
you need to figure out what does that do. I mean, you have web application type security issues that, the goal is to hack into that web app or web API, and then exploit it, and eventually you get perhaps root access there, and you can read the text file, which is a flag there. It's very.
Are these things like chained together, or is this like hacking to this web page, get the flag, and then move to the next challenge? Or do you have to do you chain them together, like get one flag here and then do something else? Or is this, it really depends on?
I'd say it depends, but usually they are not chained. Like basically you finish the puzzle or solve the challenge, the new challenge opens. It really depends.
Is there any help or any hints or anything like that?
Yeah, it's a penalty points for hints as well. Like
penalty
points, so you get for often to reveal the hint. Now, whether the quality of that hint will be good or not, that's another topic. But you get some. It's more like a competition. So kind of you learn through the competition, and often actually it works. Like back in the days, we built some CTF challenges for some international conferences, and I know for the fact that one of that very good CTF team there, they didn't touch cryptography type challenges. They had no idea about different encryption or decryption type algorithms. But throughout that CTF period for that conference, which normally runs 2 to 3 days, they actually went and start learning about it, reading articles, and eventually solve that challenge, which the guy was telling me that in a normal cases I wouldn't bother even to read about this. Kind of, I was like, okay, but now because of this sense of competition and like
they look
actually
into
now know, wow, like there's a lot of things now I can go and check up for it.
And you think like being good at CTFs, like sort of a good starting point in security career, or?
I think you can immediately test or compare your skill set to others. It's very hands-on, like interactive. So if you talk about like the life cycle of like a security issue, I mean, the first thing is you need to find the security issue, right? Finding a vulnerability. Okay, there are some perhaps techniques you can follow to find that, but then it comes the exploitation phase, which I typically call it is at the most close to an art, because it depends. Like often when you are engaged by a customer to do a security assessment, you may find an interesting security issue, but just to turn that and prove to them that this is really bad, it may take you the rest of the duration of the engagement just to demonstrate one security issue has a really major impact on the environment. So I think someone who I feel when you go through that exploitation phase, you actually learn quite a lot, and you really understand a lot of quirks. Like when you are a security researcher, we don't have the luxury of having a debugger as like a software engineers that you can just attach to the program, figure out what's happened. Like there is like nothing like that. You kind of,
You're
lot
guessing.
of times, it's a lot of trial and error. A lot of time there is a lack of tooling even to interface with something. So it's a lot of complexity involved in there. So I think,
But like experience from like sec talks we run in Ljubljana, like that few CTFs that we had, it was interesting that like on the guys who were leading on like highest on the scoreboard were actually developers. So not people like dealing with security or solving the CTFs. There were like few guys that like really when the problem is presented or the puzzle was presented, they start like really thinking outside of the box, because all other, let's say, security people that working security were relying on tools, relying on, okay, which tool should I use to extract something out, in compared to the developer who was thinking, okay, what am I seeing here? How can I? So
exactly. There have been so many cases like that people who are completely new, let's say, to security, they come to Sec Talks and then they are taught in a ladder board. The other things, like sometimes we had actually a specific case in Sydney that one of the top players a few years ago, he actually didn't even know about all these toolings that is available, like some of these Python libraries that are available just to make the reversing test super easy. He was just building everything, thinking about it, reasoning about it, and writing
I'm
it.
like that in these cases.
When he was presenting that, and then these like, there's a lot also students coming in, they are looking at this guy like, wow, like the algorithm that he built, for example, to prove that, I don't know, to find to crack the hash. And they're like, and they were telling him after the talk that, hey, you just make a call to this library that exactly does that.
Yeah. Yeah, if you don't know what's in the toolbox, you cannot use it. Yeah, right.
Yeah, but on the other side, like you also get, like usually there are multiple ways how to solve the puzzle.
100%, yeah.
And like it was it say in Unix world, like there are many ways to skin a cat. Like when like the whoever won present the solution, like then you can like start comparing whether you were thinking the same or using the same methods or different. So yeah.
My observation of one of these Sec Talks was very interesting, because I saw a couple of guys that were programmers, because there's no like limit what tools you can use or not use. Somebody is writing something in Perl, somebody just said, I'm just gonna throw this code that needs to be encrypted or decrypted into a spreadsheet, or Bash, it doesn't really matter, just whatever tools you use. So that's very interesting.
I just remember there's an interesting story how you two met, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You remember?
I caused more problems.
I just remember today and said to Otto that it's funny, because I think it's worth saying how you two.
Well, obviously it's your fault, right? So
yeah, I mean it's your fault for solving the challenge and revealing the secret.
I don't remember everything, but I know that so we have the Slack, and you dropped in the page from Pedram's website, and there's like capture the flag kind of a thing on his.
No, he was like hiring.
I didn't read that. I just saw that it's a capture the flag, something with the Docker.
You didn't know what was it.
I didn't know. There was just like this page, and he Loki posted it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna look what's that, just to play with him, because I think it was dependent on Python. I just want to like play with it so that I can like show off from Python in front of him, because I know he tries to avoid programming as much as possible. And there was something with the Docker container. I cannot remember what it was, but yeah, it had some cipher in there and some environment keys, and I just like you said, I looked into how to blow up this bridge.
Yeah, and then you wrote a blog post on
Yeah,
your site.
oh yeah. I wrote like I didn't. Yeah, that's like
And that's when you
disclosure.
contact me.
That's
Hey, by the way, here is a write. I'm like, did you know what you saw? That was our career entrance challenge.
Yeah. Because I did. Yeah, what I did is like when I was doing this, like I wanted to just like then have like a document describing all the steps that I did. So I wrote down like everything, and I was like, I needed something for my blog at the time. I was like, okay, I'm gonna write this down, right? And then in the end, like the last step was like send email, and then was like your email, and send the email, and I sent the blog post attached to it, and that was stupid. And in hindsight, then yeah, I know I'm sorry for that. I think that I apologized to you for lunch.
When you put it public,
Yeah, I put it public. Yeah, that was shitty thing to do, and perhaps that could be a nice segue into discussion about hacking and ethics, probably. And what you said, how you said, what's the term? Disclosure, full disclosure, 90 days and everything. Yeah, in the
it just made it harder for other people to apply because the challenge,
that's good.
The challenge changed. That's the thing. So
that's the thing now. Better
you
people.
can't necessarily stop people to write up about your challenges, right?
Yeah.
Like, but well, make a better challenge, the next challenge. So and you hope that they will read that write up.
Well, I didn't get the job, so the next guy must probably be better than I am. So
no, but like for me, like. It was interesting because it was a job ad, basically, and I saw this as a very creative job ad because
beautiful.
You need to like solve the puzzle to actually know what like how to contact you.
Well, you needed to know a lot of stuff. You needed to know,
of course,
you needed to know. What is Caesar cipher? I think it was there. Environment variables, Docker, missing things, Python code. There was a lot of these very things that like I saw in my professional career, how these things work, and yeah. So I imagine you in your company you're looking for people that have some solid engineering background, but they also like are curious to extreme or something like.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
No, like maybe we could like cut here and
enjoy a glass of water. I'll do commercials.
You so Otto will now present the commercials.
Yeah. So if you guys enjoy this podcast and if you want to keep enjoying it, and it will really help us if you join us and support us. There's a link below in the footnotes. So yeah, join our Patreon supporters, and it will mean a lot to us, and we will be able to make this wonderful content. Chip. Oh, here you go.
So let's start the next section. So what I wanted to talk about is application security. So in terms of you now being on this defensive side, where like you educate developers and give them this knowledge of how to like apply security in let's call it life cycle of development life cycle, and where to start
for application security.
From developer's perspective.
May I like kind of like expand his question, like software development cycle means that there are different phases in the development of software. So you have planning, designing, implementation, testing, deployment, and then some maintenance, right? You have all these steps. And traditionally what companies did is like they went through all these steps, released the product, and then probably perhaps also hired some pen tester because company that was trying to buy it or something wanted some audit or something like that. But that's not how things should be done, if I understand correctly. And is that like a good intro to this section?
Where to apply it on all those steps? When the earliest better. Like the more like you can't really. Is a non-functional requirement, right? This is one of those that can't really have a face for it, but it's kind of applies everywhere. I mean, I'm trying to think about the question. Like, is it more? I think for one of the things I found out after working with, one of the reasons I actually started working more on a defensive side was the problems that I always had this interest that find the root cause where the issue really is. Like, you do a code audit, a secure code audit, and you do penetration testing, and you can see a trend of security issues that just keep appearing. And one approach to that is like, yeah, they don't understand that. It's more approach of us versus them. Like, they're just, I don't know, they're dumb. These guys, they don't give a shit about security. Okay, whatever. And I'm gonna just do the same thing. But the other approach for me, which was more interesting, was like, why? Like, why this? Because that security issue that normally you find in an environment or a system, it's is an edge case that I wish that program does. So why it is not that interesting for those developers to pay attention to it? So this was a part that it didn't easy with me, that why they don't pay attention to this, like why they don't really go after fixing it. And I started exploring their field even more, like what is actually happening in the whole software engineering industry, how the software is being built. Well, building a software is one thing, but keeping it online in prod is a completely different thing, right? So you then try to understand the limitation, the restrictions, and then sometimes you have this understanding, hey, a lot of those security recommendations that you give is actually gonna break the whole thing. Like, it is not applicable. So parts of that is related to it, and parts of that is a lack of understanding and awareness. I feel actually security need to be redefined for a lot of engineers. Like, I found a lot of times they are so biased toward that what security is. You will talk with developers from one company, you will find that their security for them is dependency scanning. Mm-hmm. And for the other ones, man in the middle. Like, yeah, man in the middle. If it happens, it's bad. It doesn't happen, we are safe. The other ones like phishing. The other one is, we need to keep our passwords long. It's authentication. And you bias toward that, and you feel that's the security. But versus, security is all and above, all those things. I think that's where my interest kind of started, kind of going, rather than being a game of us versus them, we security guys, we find bugs, you guys need to fix it. Just trying to understand, trying to bridge this gap. One of the things I mentioned it earlier, that if this is a software engineering podcast, because in the terminology even we use in security industry is different from often.
How do you mean that?
Vulnerability, but by the end of the day, is a bug or a defect, right? So
it can be a feature.
If
it's the design flow, then this is a feature.
But it's like one is actually opportunity, the other is a problem. Kind of thinking.
It's kind of redefining that, right? So by the end of the day, in a lot of cases, if you think about security, vulnerability is a runtime exception. Mm-hmm. Now that kind of communicates better with engineers, but for us in security, is a vulnerability, we call it. Yeah. So I think even just bridging those gaps, trying to understand kind of the other side of the game a little bit more, and then asking them to help, because if you look at if I look at the history of some security issues that was really addressed, you will feel there was an engineering team that they embed this kind of security control within the framework. Like obvious example of it is, for example, SQL injection, right? SQL injection kind of it gone away in majority of the cases, not because suddenly we have an aware community of developers, but because the frameworks these days that you write the code in it just doesn't allow you that raw access to the query.
So you're saying in a way there are, I don't know, frameworks or programming languages that are like safer for unskilled developers to produce safe code.
Safe code, yeah.
Could you like? Is this what you're trying to say?
Definitely
Can
there are frameworks,
can you say, like, for instance, that there is a, I don't know, framework that is like a bit more like stupidity proof, or how should I say?
Stupid proof. I mean, there's definitely frameworks that sort of prevent someone to shoot in their legs.
Yeah.
Like, definitely there are there,
Because
but for a subset of security issues, right? There are. I always make this example that if someone writes a PHP app and making it secure, I will hire that guy because it means he's damn good in security as well. Versus a guy who write the same application in ASP.NET, for example, because the framework itself does a lot of heavy lifting in terms of, like, it doesn't even, let's just make an example of, and the reason I know this is because in my team, we create security challenges for software engineers. And then we need to convert that to multiple languages. And often it's really hard to convert it in one framework versus one language. And kind of it also exposes us that the maturity in a different, communities of these languages. And yet some frameworks, like, we can't even introduce that security bug in them just because the framework
means disabling so many default protection mechanisms that you really need to pay a lot of effort into disabling all these whistles and blows and okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in a way, like, when, like, this is sort of a for developers, when, like, in this planning phase, what stack to choose, or what platform to choose, or what programming language to choose, can also...
Perhaps the question is, the first question in this planning phase is like discussing perhaps even with stakeholders in how secure should this stuff be. Like, are you running on very personal data, or is this just, a random blog, or, I think I would start there, right? What does this thing need to do? What kind of data does it store? Are there any regulations?
Usually it is the other way around. Usually the senior engineers, like, choose the sexiest, the hottest framework or programming language out there, and because this is the something, like, everybody is working on, and that's the pick, that's the weapon of choice. So
we're victims of hype-driven development.
In a way.
Yeah. I don't think you're gonna get this answer. Again, all these, especially if these are old established frameworks, they have special teams, they do additional security audits regularly. So if you have these kind of frameworks that are out there for a long time, I think probably people have looked at the code. They did, that part you kind of like believe that checks were done, right? With new stuff, there's always opportunity to find something there that, but equally, like, if you have very old code bases, if you have software that was written by a lot of engineers during a lot of different periods when company was small and then became big, and you have poor, and that's probably the next question, security culture in the company, people doing sloppy jobs, it's essentially a big attack surface, I guess.
I don't know that also, because I like to think that way, but then you look at some of the trend of security ones that reported even this year in really old codes, the codes that are open source, the code that is out there, the code that has been audited and most likely being scanned by numerous applications, and still you find, like, security issues there. On the other side, we actually have some people in security that they lost hope. That, we can't teach devs how to write a secure code. They just make it harder for them to build something, at least that will eventually result into in a more secure stage. Is a mix of things that you will find I mean, you kind of assume that the new frameworks may have more holes, but not necessarily. It could be a security issue related to a library that they are using, and there's a security bug there, and then it goes on.
But today you don't use this framework. You also use third-party libraries. You also inject, I don't know, ads in your page through whatever. People they install a lot of different things on their devices. So there's a lot of potential to.
So you shouldn't limit yourself to only your part of the code, but the whole ecosystem, the whole system.
But I think we still need to be like pragmatic, right? In the end of the day, developers do need to ship something in reasonable amount of time.
Sure.
Yeah.
The way I see like the simple exercise, like I think like each developer team should do is threat modeling. In terms of understanding what are the.
Please explain this to our audience.
So, in a way of writing down or using a diagram way of how your application is working and how data is going through your application, where are like possibilities of sort of risk that could happen, and how are you going to prevent this from happening, and like it gives you a way to sort of do in a way risk management, but also this exercise is also good in a way to you figuring out what are your crown jewels. So basically, what are you actually going to protect? Because sometimes, like, there are people that are investing a lot of money in, I don't know, web application firewalls and protecting completely like things that are not that important, but on the other hand, they might say have the like personal data unencrypted somewhere, and they are doing like maybe the backups that are also unencrypted, and that's, I don't know, shipping that to S3 bucket.
Is it enough to just write this down and make sure that everybody understands this, or do you periodically then monitor these things?
Of course, like in a way you want to, like the way I see it, you want to like when doing a new features to the application or product you're developing, you again do this threat modeling, because like in a way you already create one, and the new features, you will see how this affects the whole system.
Yeah, I mean, threat modeling, definitely, I'll actually call it a rapid threat modeling, something that is more effective. The problem I found is, again, it's hard to get devs to think about threats. And kind of comes back to the old conversation we had, builder and breaker mindset.
Yeah.
Like people who are good in building something does not necessarily know how things can break. And it's completely understandable. So it's kind of also, you need to kind of empower them one more level that, okay, these are the possible things can go wrong, regardless of what feature you're working on. Think about whether this could be applicable to the things, because...
Are these things like, we now have these static code analyzers that, read the code and spit out, I don't know, potential issues that are like wrong use of code, or static code analyzers check the code, but they can also, you have similar tools that do kind of like security testing as well. Is that enough, or we need to also build awareness and knowledge in developers? Everything.
You throw everything at it. Like,
everything.
It's a solution. Like, whatever you can do in security, just do it. Like, it's such a chaotic, unfortunately, environment that I personally think, and I have examples of that when devs are on board with the idea of the security is important, we should take it seriously, you go miles away in terms of your security culture and maturity, rather than if you want the tool to tell you whether you're doing something good or not. Because oftentimes, I mean, I'm not talking about the false positive, false negatives, and most likely you've dealt with it a lot. But it's not going to change the culture. It's not going to change the understanding. For me, the problem actually starts in the brain of that.
I'm going to challenge you here on this. These organizations, responsibility starts from the top, right? So I need to sell your service and your services to my boss as engineer or engineering lead, right? How do you convince people from top down that security is so important that they're gonna now invest into tools or education of their developers so that it becomes something that the company should care about? So how do you propagate that information from the top to the bottom? Do you need to convince people that, we're gonna lose a lot of money, or we're gonna have bad publicity, or all of these things?
I don't know. I don't even know someone who will know much. I mean, in reality, still there is a lot of security budgets are being approved because of compliance requirement, because of some legislation, and that's true. You see the amount of security assessment done by organization in financial sectors. Well, the number one reason may not be so much about leaking data, is because of compliance. Of course, leaking data, financial thing is a serious thing, but I think still that has a great power to it. Like those standards. How you convince that guy? I don't know.
To be honest, like security is pretty hard to sell. Like basically, on one hand, you might choose to do sort of like those scarcity and say how what is like out there on the internet and how you're going to be hacked and impounded.
I actually want to say something. My job at the moment is not so much dealing with the people higher up. It's actually how to convince the developer to think about security, because that's for me is a bigger problem. How you make security interesting and engaging for a software engineer. Because by the end of the day, whatever security issue we have is a rare use case or edge case. And if you look at the backlog of what this dev guy gonna do is like this feature, that feature, but most likely is filled with lots of other bugs. How would you make your security bug being something on top of that hey, it needs immediate attention? So we're dealing with those priorities as well. But I think that's the part for me is interesting to talk, like what are the things would make security interesting for engineers, because that's whole my hope here.
And what do you propose? How do you make it interesting? You gamify? You want us to study? Well,
no. It's a good question.
That's a segue to the next.
But still, I still wanna like be here at application security and maybe start before going how to like do this education purpose, or like do this education to of developers. How to explain security to them, how to make them engage in this, like what he said with gamification of this, or showing real examples and showing the code, or is like what usually, or let's say usually is done, like there's a external pen test, like breaking down the code and just sending the report to R&D and saying this everything you see on the report is broken, you need to fix it. What's the
definitely I can say things that doesn't work is top-down approach. Like if a manager said that you have to do security, that's not going to work, or you have to do this security, address that's not going to change anything in that dev's mindset that security is important. But things kind of learning more about their worldview of what they would care. Like I found every developer is interested in problem solving. They are interested and engaged in, make something better. Well, guess what? When you make a software secure, you have a better code quality. You may have even better, more reliable application. Kind of trying to highlight these angles more than it's just the edge case. That, hey, no, actually your program does more than what it should. well, for example, you just need to, let's just make an example of a calculator that needs to take two numbers and give you a result. Well, you can implement that in many different ways. When you show that a certain way of implementation of that calculator could also allow someone to inject additional code and execute code using your calculator, and kind of saying that, but by the end of the day, you just wanted to build a calculator. Why you just don't make your software just do the calculation? You don't worry about what else can happen, just that part. It actually makes their software to do that things even better. So that's what I find is interesting. Of course, the whole concept of gamification also is proven. I feel competition also, it's something that helps.
But if like stay on this, like what would be like, I don't know, to maintain like secure hygiene inside like development life cycle, what would be like steps that
I think it's just everyone's job. I think first of all, stop thinking about this is the security team are a gatekeeper of our organization.
Sure.
Right?
But in if like you were like, what would be, I don't know, 3 top things that each company or each business that is focusing in development should, I don't know, invest effort, money, what to consider?
I mean, some of the key things there is, I mean, there's a lot of things, but just this understanding that perhaps security is not a single team's job, and showing them a real example of that, an incident that actually happened that proved the case that if we just relying on just an audit to come through or things like that, how many things can be missed. You can't have your junior developers or even senior developers advocating about security, and then you have your tech leads and software architect that pushing for features that need to be released yesterday. That doesn't work. Like, you need to give your team a time to think twice about the code that they write, the design that they build, which kind of contradict with the speed of a lot of businesses going this way. But sorry to say that, is to make a software usable is one thing, but to make it secure is another thing. You can make a software that perfectly function, but it isn't secure. Like, what will take you to go there? Well, one factor, just give your team more time. Because there are cases that I had, the team, the devs, they're really on board with the idea that, oh, I really like to do threat modeling. I really like to follow this secure design pattern to implement my code. But the thing is, I can't, because I'm not even given the time to do it. So I think that's a bigger problem to solve first. And then after that, once you have that established, then making devs more familiar with the ways that things can get exploited, and kind of making more familiar with this breaker mindset, that so they can start thinking intuitively about, well, what can go wrong, rather than just thinking about what program should do. They should also think about what program should not do, which is, again, the sky is the limit.
But
I'm worried.
Sub question: should like in the process of quality assurance, should also like a security test be part of this?
I think it's the case. Isn't it already the?
I don't know. Usually are not. Usually, like QA is focusing on usability and if the product is like reaching some performance that is expected and so on, but usually the security is left out. Well, last time I was sort of a situation like the feature went through the Q&A. Everything was like great, and then on the bug bounty. It sort of found a huge security flaw, and then like we sort of go back to Q&A and said, wasn't that tested? And they were like, well, that's not expected to be an input. Well,
Why would someone do even that?
Yeah.
exactly. They were like questioning, why would somebody do that?
So it's not essentially the QA's job is not to do security audit or look for that kind of loops.
I mean, they can help,
Yeah.
but again, the way that we are, again, my knowledge of it is limited to those people who have. We try to train them as a QA to kind of look for security issues, but there are two things you reach there is like the skill level. That's one thing, and the second is the defined task of things that they have to do. Like often they may need to use the UI interface to interact with the backend, versus you may find actually if you remove that UI, you just directly interact with the API, you can find security issues there, but that's not even defined that's not even their job, because they want to first say, the usability is actually more highlighted there than these security edge cases. So that's what I said, throw everything at it. It's just whatever you think is suitable for your organization.
I'm gonna use this throw everything at it. You have this beautiful product and a service as well, I imagine. It's called SecDim. So SecTalks is events, but SecDim is your company, if I understand correctly. And what you guys do is very mix of the things that we described here, but you kind of like offer these things to companies. That's kind of like, but I will still invite you to explain to us what SecDim is and what you guys do.
Yeah, so it pretty much started with workshops, running secure development workshops for developers. We actually started right in middle of COVID, the start of the COVID.
Beautiful time.
And then it kind of started with that, because I felt that's like a missing part. We do need to get more engineers involved to help us to solve some security problems. I'm not just talking about developers to be aware to put a patch here and there. I'm talking about those more like fundamental solutions, like can they put something in the compiler? Can they think about a popular third-party library that will disallow these things? So this is, I think, more on engineering side to solve that. So that's why I reached out more on that. So the workshops, these are the things we regularly run for companies privately. We do have also public workshops. The focus is effectively how to build a defensive software from scratch. So rather than bombarding the engineers or devs with, this security issue, that security bug, that vulnerability, is there anything else we can do that you when you start writing a software, you follow that, some of those principles, and can make your software relatively reliably secure. That's one thing. And as part of that, this platform came out, which again was an outreach to the people to, hey, you want to try to see how a security bug can be addressed. Now, one thing I actually found, but through experience, I found is missing is that, so when I started, we talked about capture the flag. When I started delivering my workshops a few years ago, it was to make developers more engaged in security. Definitely, I would include a CTF part. That, hey, it's the end of the workshop. Let's just do a CTF. Let's just hack some things, and someone at the end will win. It was engaging. It was interesting. Perhaps they would learn a new security issue, but there was always this problem missing. By the end of the day, this person needs to go back and fix this, but we haven't even talked about that part. This is out of scope for security, right? You deal with that. I tell you the bug, you figure out how to fix it. And that's how I felt where the problem is. Like, we may these days talk good about some of the security issues that we have normally in a security language, but we don't really talk so much about ways and bad ways of fixing it. So the idea of this platform I built was, well, we have captured the flag. How about we have a thing called fix the flag? So you got the score.
Sort of a reverse capture the flag.
Reverse capture the flag. I even show you where is the security bug is, but you only get the score if you fix it in the right way. Now, originally, some of the ways that we were testing if someone can fix the flag was too restrictive. And to my, I learned that, now there's a huge lack of understanding and awareness somewhere. So we needed to kind of relax that. But now it's interesting just to see how people actually think about a single problem, but they fix it in a completely different way. And obviously also learning how to make something, write a better patch for something that I'm publishing.
So
that way.
In practical terms, you log into the SecDim website. Probably you can do this on your own, or you also offer workshop, as you said. You get like a zip file or a repository of a code that it has a security vulnerability, and then you try to fix it, and then you upload it, and then the tool will tell you if you actually solved the problem or not, right? That's the mechanics of this thing, right?
So the idea was exactly. So kind of you bring those security issues to the language that developers understand. So, and the tooling that the developers they have, like, so you have Git, you have containers, and translate to some of the security issues, like, let's just call it, I don't know, the one that I talk a lot, new integer overflow. Not necessarily in a text or a video recording of me talking. Translate that to a test that developers will deal with it on a daily basis. And the goal of the challenge is that can you pass the test? Now, depending on the complexity of the challenge, you may be given the test, so you can clearly see what is the input, what is the expected output. That as it gets more challenging, the tests are missing, because the idea is that the hacker will never give you their test. You need to figure that out yourself.
Okay, that's an improvement then. There. Okay. Yeah.
So, but also encouraging developers in very like a implicit way that maybe you want to think about writing these tests yourself for your program. You learn that if a program just deals with two numbers, right, there are these usability tests that it has to always pass, but how about these other things that can result in a security issue? So the kind of they learn it by practicing, and the other things around, getting the score and like getting their name on the ladder board is like more like cream on the top. But
please let me, please, and I'll then let you. I found it very interesting. Like, you don't just say, this is integer overflow assignment or something. You have these kind of like practical stories, how a company got hacked, or how literally millions or billions were lost because of this exploit, which means that there is a real world connection of this security issue that you actually learn about. Can you tell us a bit more? How do you design these things?
That was interesting you mentioned, because that happened again throughout some of my workshops, that I found in security, we are not really great in naming something. We're actually really good at naming something really complex, like, I don't know, cross-site request forgery or server-side request forgery.
Yeah, but keep in mind that lately it's very popular when new like exploit of something is found or new bug is found. We need to create a logo. We need to create a special site where the CVE is published. So this is something that becoming popular to name the attack or the bug.
So hard bleed.
These things, right? There was a changeover. There was a lot of, our industry got just lifted up and become suddenly super popular. But just coming back to that, again, my goal is to get more, hopefully, engineers on the security side. So whatever make them to remember about this security issue. If I tell someone, hey, this is a server-side request forgery bug, 2 months from today, they're going to forget about it. But if I say, hey, this is a bug that happened to XYZ company and resulted into that. Now, having this interesting story, someone after like few years ago, he did a workshop, came to me and say, hey, can you just help me figure these things, part of the code out? I think this may have that GitHub bug. What do you mean GitHub bug? That bug, it was GitHub. Oh, it's talking about there was a major vulnerability in GitHub for mass assignment. Now, we call it mass assignment, but that kind of tell me, okay, that seems to work. That kind of sticks in their mind. Yeah, and I think
And like the process of you preparing these challenges, like you basically tailor this to based on the company that is like acquire your services, and based on their stack or so, or based on your past experience of you being the code reviewer of auditing the code and seeing what are the most common mistakes the developers do. I'll create a bunch of like examples or exercises for this kind of bugs. How is the process of what is relevant or what developers are working on?
So there's like different levels of content given the maturity of that organization. So there are kind of a group of security bugs that, but regardless of you write in Python or use Kubernetes, you need to be aware of them. So we make them tailored toward that organization that, hey, okay, these are the things you have to follow. And then the next nice thing is that then the next step is, because the whole platform has an open SDK, they can even contribute their own type of problems, and that will be presented in terms of challenge. So a lot of times it happens that we turn a security audit report into a challenge, because oftentimes a security report comes in and then you get few people, dealing with that, fixing the bug, and that's it. And the whole knowledge is gone. Like, what was it? But rather than, we kind of want to make that more persistent for that organization. Like, you have new devs coming in. Hey, do you know we had this bug? Well, here's now a challenge for it. Can you try to solve it? And the goal is to fix it. We simulate the same bug for them, and they will kind of try to do it. That's primarily the focus is, and the other part is more running competition or game events for them. Like you want to dedicate time for the team to come in one day and start exploring some of these security issues. Can't just give them a link and go and do it on your own. Well,
yeah, they probably did that already. Should we bring that ship in?
Yeah, I was like thinking maybe like from how long have you like done this kind of workshop of dealing with developers? So I'm thinking of like the track record of you
running the workshops perhaps is like 8 years.
Okay,
so I was running it
and
different
in these 8 years, like you still see what are the top 3 like major flaws that developers are still like, or was it called deadly sins in software development? What is still out there, and I don't know. If you track this at all.
I mean, it's.
You can see in his eyes all the horrors that he's seen.
I mean, you mean what are there? You're talking about what still?
What
issues
like
happening?
Yeah, of course. Like, what kind of mistakes are developers still like making in terms of like example, like you presented the challenge yesterday. For instance, the integer overflow that was like crucial in a way of understanding
how it happens,
or what is still out there.
Well, I can say one of these quick fixes, like without really understanding what the root cause of the problem is, trying to quickly put some if statement around the thing. We talked about Heartbleed. I do encourage you to go and look at the patch for the hardware. And don't be surprised to just see 2 if statement for that security bug. So kind of not really understanding, hey, this security bug cannot be treated like other bugs that you fix in your program. I think that's the thing I still feel is missing quite a lot. Like, you can't just put a couple of statements here and there just to patch things. One of the things that I keep talking about it is all about, it's just so many security issues. I don't know which one I pick.
Name one.
Like, some of the things that is reappearing is like this whole concept of front-end validation is a joke. You need to do things on back end. And I thought we solved this problem, but it's kind of coming back. And you still see, these things that just did the validation on the front end and the QA didn't pick it up because they use the UI to interact with the API.
And modern web frameworks in the front end are becoming more and more popular, and everything everything is being done in front end, and whatever is in back.
A lot of the other thing you see a lot is a lot of what's called information disclosure, that APIs just send too much information to the front-end library because the heavy lifting is done by front-end library, and you don't actually know. Actually, if you observe just the traffic that comes in, it's just too much content. I had one case that I could see even the password hashes of people. And I think the security bugs, the one that I feel companies need to go after are those ones that are in their business logic. They're semantic ones. They are the ones that get popped and get attacked. I think we are kind of relatively good on a low-hanging fruit, the things that the scanners can pick up. But the ones that they are really deep inside the code and mostly related to the semantic of the code, they are the ones that, it still is just still there.
So maybe to end this.
I think we need to invite Pedram to some Slovenian beers now, probably.
Slovenian beers?
Do you enjoy Slovenian beers?
Which one?
Which one? Well, we explore.
From Serbia.
So maybe words of wisdom from you.
Last few words.
Yeah. What would be in terms of addressing
friendly chat.
Addressing developers, addressing the management, running the business.
I think it's just get security early in. Like, you get benefit of cost saving a lot. The earliest, the better. And that's why I was really advocating for training, because that's the earliest stage you can get security in. When that feature inception or that Scrum meeting that you have to talk about the feature, actually that's the time you can start thinking about security really early on, and you can stop things to happen right there before you're implementing the code and someone auditor comes in to do it. So I think you get security in as early as possible.
Okay, so wise words. Will you say thank you to everybody, or should I?
You should do thank you.
Well, Pedram, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks,
Andraž, thank you for this kind words and leadership in this. And thank you, our listeners of Ogrodje, and thanks to supporters. We have so many that I can name them. So I can say thank you, Jan, Janč, and Marko for supporting us. And I hope that you guys will give us some feedback, especially given that this is now in English. And till next time, thank you very much.
Yeah, and we promise to maybe do another about security, because we saw that security is quite popular, in Discord.
Yeah, there's tons of. Yeah, we need to finish now. Thank you, everybody, and thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Bye.